Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle Me in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. Lordy, Lordy, the more that I continue to research and follow through on trying to find out WTH, what the heck is going on, the crazier it gets. The more information falls into my lap, verifying something crazy is going on. Something crazy is planned for our world. Recently, I did a book review on this book. I couldn't find the book, or I didn't have the book, so I used the PDF online. And the people of America being brainwashed into slavery. Shocking expose of communist textbook on psychopolitical warfare. Evidence of its use in schools across our nation disguised as psychology. So are the people of America being brainwashed into slavery? I would say the answer is yes. And I believe I can prove it, believe it or not. I got a book in the mail today. Confessions of a Stalin's Agent. So what was going on in America between World War I and World War II with the Communist political party gaining power and influence in America? How far have they come? Have they always intended to stay underground, to covertly bring about a worldwide revolution, another revolution in the United States, to bring the whole world into a global world order? It's in this book. Unbelievable information. The back of this book says, the author of this book was formerly a leader of the Communist Party. He was assigned by Stalin's agents in the United States to bring among young people and help to work among young people and help bring about a bloody red revolution. He fought the church. He fought the American way of life. He plotted the death of officials and Christian leaders. He used a number instead of a name. He worked with red plotters, communist, from New York and Hollywood. Wow, this all sounds kind of familiar, do you think? While a communist, he was invited by Eleanor Roosevelt to be a guest at the White House. While a communist, he was invited by Eleanor Roosevelt to be a guest at the White House. So what do you suppose that says about Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the president, who apparently employed Harry Hopkins to manage affairs in the United States during the war, supplying Russia, i.e. communist nation, right here, Confessions of Stalin's Agent, to help them receive all the goods they wanted, planes, tanks, and ships, and supplies, and even plates to print money. So who do you suppose paid for that money? I didn't know this about the communist. He was invited by Eleanor Roosevelt to be a guest at the White House. So do people believe that the fact that they brought us World War I, tricked us into it, deceived us into it, brought us World War II, tricked us into it, deceived us into it, brought us 9/11 and tricked us into that and deceived us into that, and so much more? And when President John Kennedy spoke up about this in 1963, shortly thereafter he was assassinated at Delaney Plaza, a Masonic plaza, and behind Freemasonry and the Masonic religion is apparently also King Solomon's temple, i.e. the Jewish religion. So much is going on that's right in our faces. This book tells the inside story of a man who, in repentance, left Joseph Stalin to serve Jesus Christ. So I've been saying all along that this appears to be a huge spiritual battle, this world revolution, this new age, this global order that they're trying to bring about, globalism. And even the current president, Donald Trump, saying the United States recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, clearly shows who is in control in America today. Make no mistake about it. And they talk about all these sealed indictments and Q and anonymous and all that, that the cabal, these evil people are going to be rounded up. I suspect it's just more of the same propaganda. And I believe I can prove that clearly. So before I read from this book, let's just look at some other material that I have. Number one, prior to World War II, in the New York Times, a letter was posted. New World Order pledged to Jews. That would be the newly created state of Israel after World War II, something they have been working for hundreds of years and brought the world numerous revolutions. I've gone over the books, made plenty of book reviews on many books on this topic. But this was in October 6th, 1940. Arthur Greenwood of British War Cabinet sends message of assurance here. Righting of wrongs seen. So was it wrong that the Christian Bible was created, the Christian religion was created, and indicating in the Bible and the history of the world that certain Jewish leaders and Pharisees had Jesus Christ crucified, and that Jesus Christ is the Savior of the world. But apparently they would have us believe that Jesus Christ was a false Savior, Messiah. I believe that Jesus Christ was certainly sent from the spiritual realm, call him the Son of God, preaching that we should love one another. This global world order and the things I'm about to read clearly show hate and death. So we all have to decide, do we want the path of love or do we want the path of hate? English rabbi delivers to Dr. SSY's new statement on question after war. In the first public declaration on the Jewish question since the outbreak of the war, Arthur Greenwood, member without portfolio in the British War Cabinet, assured the Jews of the United States that when victory was achieved, an effort would be made to found a new world order based on the ideals of justice and peace. And if I've learned anything, when these people speak, who are behind this pursuit of a global world order, these communist people, Zionists, Illuminati, members of secret societies with a Kabbalistic mystery of Babylon religion, whenever they speak or put stuff in writing, they are usually lying and deceiving. I probably should say they are always lying and deceiving. Mr. Greenwood, who is deputy leader of the British Labour Party, declared that in the New World Order, the conscience of civilized humanity would demand that the wrongs suffered by the Jewish people in so many countries should be righted. So as we already know, and you can go on YouTube and look this up, for 2,000 years, more than 90 countries have exiled, banished, policed, even massacred Jewish citizens. Why was that? And even in this letter here in the New York Times, they call it a Jewish problem. Why did they always have a problem? Is it anti-Semitic to ask those questions when in the newspaper It says that the whole world is going to be handed to them, and that they are going to be demand that the wrongs suffered by the Jewish people in so many countries should be righted. What are we supposed to think? And I did notice on my video that I published yesterday, January 1st, 2019, that there was when I used a Premiere Publishing where everybody could comment to each other, discuss. One girl was saying that she was living in Germany and she thinks the German people are crazy because nobody will listen to these things, and that she was in fear. And I thought after the video was over, I need to tell her, in Germany, you can't talk about these things. You will be arrested. We need to remember that. This is going to come to the United States too, unless we all pay attention. He added that after the war, an opportunity would be given to Jews everywhere to make a distinctive and constructive contribution in the rebuilding of the world. So does that mean that they're going to call on Jewish citizens in every country all over the world to step up and help take control of the world when they bring about a world revolution, a global world order? And none of us like to say it's all Jewish people. A lot of Jewish people have been trying to warn us. Henry Mackau, PhD author in Canada, wrote the book, Illuminati, the Cult That Hijacked the World. Rabbi Mara van Antelman, to eliminate the opaque. People who believe in God, believe in Jesus. And Benjamin Friedman in his famous speech. Please go look him up. Listen to the speech. Don't believe me. Go look at these books or watch my videos or other people's videos. The message was delivered last week to Dr. Stephen S. Wise, chairman of the executive committee of the World Jewish Congress, by Rabbi Maurice Perlswig, chairman of the British section of Congress. Rabbi Perlswig arrived from England Monday evening. Intention to right wrongs. So maybe I'll read the rest of that letter, or you can look it up at the end of this video. But let's look at some other books that I've gone over or have to go over. Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. These books are published, 1984. Remember that book? And so many other books. Does anybody believe that there's not a new world order planned and in the making today? The preparations, the activities of the past, 911, facial recognition systems, artificial intelligence, microchipping children and other people, surveillance systems, assassinations, even presidents, and the overthrow of many countries, and threats of an economic collapse, a terrorism event, climate change, global warming. I could go on and on with all these threats facing us today. Does anybody believe that these things haven't been in the making for a long time? This book was published. Brave New World, 1932. Again in 1946. Wow. When is all this talk about these aliens coming to save us? Propaganda, you think? The Allies of Humanity. You can go see my videos on these books. I forget the number on the Aldous Huxley book, but Allies of Humanity is 199. Marshall Van Summers. The urgent message about extraterrestrial presence in the world today. So who do you suppose this extraterrestrial presence is? And if they're communicating with certain leaders and nations in this world, do you suppose they're communicating and dealing with the Israelis? Have they made a deal to assist them and to take over the world? giving them all the advanced technologies to fulfill a biblical prophesized prophecy. And of course, years ago, the limits to growth. So they've been promoting this thing about too many people in the world. We've all seen the propaganda, the social conditioning. The report for the Club of Rome's project on the predicament, says it right there, of mankind. How much more subtle does it have to be? That pretty much says the problem. Donella Meadows, Dennis Meadows, The Limits to Growth. The message of this book is urgent and sobering. This is on the back of the book. The Earth's interlocking resources, the global system of nature in which we all live, probably cannot support present rates of economic and population growth much beyond the year 2100, if that long, even with the advanced technology. In the summer of 1970, an international team of researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology began a study of the implications of continued worldwide growth. 1970, 50 years ago. And of course, now they're having everybody convinced that global warming or global cooling or climate change is real. What do you believe? And then they're dumping chemicals in the sky and installing all kinds of electromagnetic transmitters, microwave transmitters, a system called HAARP, H-A-A-R-P, which can beam huge amounts of energies off the ground, off the ionosphere, right over a city or a whole state, and probably steer the jet stream and control the weather, enhance or make weaker hurricanes and storms. Do these people have a plan? Do you see these books? So I guess that's a rhetorical question. Of course they have a plan, Rick. You got the books. You've been going over them. And I know the people watching my videos know what's going on, so I'm preaching to the choir. But you can copy the link and send it to friends. Maybe they will wake up. We can save our own ship, planet Earth, the human society as we know it. They examine the 5 basic factors that determine and in their interactions ultimately limit the growth on this planet. Population increase, agriculture production, non-renewable resource depletion, industrial output, pollution generation. The MIT team fed data into these 5 factors into a global computer model and then tested the behavior of the model under several sets of assumptions to determine alternative patterns for mankind's future. Do you trust these elites at MIT? The Limits to Growth is a non-technical report of their findings. The book contains a message of hope as well. Man can create a society in which he can live indefinitely on Earth if he imposes limits on himself and his production of material goods to achieve a state of global equilibrium with population and production in carefully selected balance. Do you believe that? When I read from this other book here, the Confessions of a Stalin's Agent, you might want to rethink your thinking if you believe the propaganda they're putting out there. The population bomb. These are all in 1968, 69, 70. Population control or race to oblivion. Remember, they're saying the planet's about to overheat. And here, back in 1969, they have a book, Population Control or Race to Oblivion. Population bomb. While you are reading these words, 4 people will have died from starvation, most of them children. And one of these eugenicists, depopulation characters, Paul Ehrlich. Okay, the back of the book. Mankind's inalienable rights. The right to eat well. The right to drink pure water. Notice these items are always in the news these days. The right to breathe clean air. So if they say we have the right to clean water, why are they fracking the earth everywhere and injecting toxins and chemicals? And the right to breathe clean air. Why are those planes dumping all those aluminum byproducts, strontium, barium into the air? And there have been scientists who have tested the water and testified that those metal products are in the air and they're quite detrimental to all of us. And the right to eat well. This is the first top 3 on the back of this book. What about the genetically modified foods, GMOs, which are not friendly to the human body, by the way? The human body doesn't recognize a lot of those genetically modified foods with different kinds of DNA to kill pesticides or herbicides, bugs or weeds or stuff like that. So they've changed the food to resist bugs or weeds and stuff like that, and to grow under strange conditions. And that altered food is not the same protein and enzymes that the way God designed it. Your body doesn't recognize it. And what does your body do when it doesn't recognize something that goes into it? Cells form around the enemy in your bloodstream. If something's in there that doesn't belong there, like a virus or a piece of particle. So the blood cells surround it and engulf it to try to smother it. And they keep piling on in the bloodstream. And this brings about tumors. They've done this with rats. And then if you get an excess of tumors and the continued growth of them, that's called cancer. FYI. The right to decent, uncrowded shelters, number 4. Then why are they herding all the people into cities? The right to enjoy natural beauty. Then why have they polluted so many rivers and caused so much destruction with bombings, even depleted uranium shells left all over Iraq and so much of the world? 4,000 nuclear explosions by the people who control our planet. How can we enjoy the natural beauty of our reality when they are doing that? Not you or I. The right to avoid regimentation. The right to avoid regimentation? I guess they have to depopulate the planet, because they certainly are regimentating everybody now, especially with the facial recognition and all the laws, Patriot Act and everything else, controlling what you say, calling it hate speech if you try to tell the truth. The right to avoid pesticide poisoning. Oh boy, they're dumping so much stuff into the earth. Wasn't it a huge company recently that was prosecuted and found guilty in California? The right to freedom from thermonuclear war. So well, they want to depopulate the planet instead of blowing it up. The right to limit families. Yeah, but they want certain countries to expand, like Israel, but they want other populations to decrease and go away, like they wanted to eliminate Germany prior to World War II. They even wrote a book that Germany must perish. And they've been painting other countries as evil enemies, like Iran or China or Russia or Iraq or all these other countries they've been bombing and destroying. Makes you wonder who wrote these books. The right to educate our children. And I can only say that everybody knows the school system has been completely, intentionally destroyed. Social conditioning, reconditioning, anti-Christian attitudes. Look at the people in the streets these days. It looks like a freak show in a lot of places. And I hate to say that, but doesn't it? I drive down the street where I live, and they got men with blue hair and red hair and dagger and serpent tattoos, and just looking kind of strange from my point of view, or maybe I'm just too old. What do you think? The right to have grandchildren. Well, Paul Ehrlich, a professor of biology and director of graduate study for the Department of Biological Sciences, Stanford University. His specialty is population biology. He has written over 70 scientific papers and several books on this related subjects. So my point is the material is out there. They are trying to sway our minds, mind control what people think. Like I showed you in this book that I made a video on. So this was series 239, part 1. So this other book I got in the mail today will be 239 series, part 2 on this book. And I did notice in the last week or two while I was out and about during the Christmas and New Year's holiday, I went on a trip over to Charleston, North Carolina on the coast. But anyway, so I stopped in some restaurants, and whenever I see these newspapers, I grabbed them. Appalachian Voice. So here I am sitting there in a restaurant having breakfast. Appalachian State responds to climate change warnings. I noticed this material popping up everywhere, but of course they don't talk about dumping the chemicals or the electromagnetic transmitters and the controlling of the weather. But if you search it on the internet or watch my videos, there are plenty of books about it, even in magazines, plenty of websites, plenty of lectures, plenty of people, plenty of government legislation. There's no doubt about it. They're dumping chemicals in the sky, and they're trying to convince people. They're trying to do it to sway off the planet from overheating. And they're saying they have to take emergency measures. So anyways, let's read this for a second. Appalachian states respond to climate change warnings. Around the world, governments and international organizations are reacting to the most recent report by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Remember when they first came out with this stuff, they called it global warming. And did you know back in the 1960s and 1970s, they were calling it global cooling? They thought an ice age was coming. Then they said it was going to have a warming event. And now they're just saying we, the people, are dumping too much toxins into the air. So we're causing these extremes in the weather. I don't believe it for a second. And I notice in these papers, they publish these articles everywhere. And if you read it and you have a discriminating mind, you can see the falsities. And if you are aware they're dumping chemicals in the sky and installing electromagnetic transmitters everywhere, which do interact with water and water vapor and the heavy metals dumped into the air, they can heat up those heavy metal particles and cause changes in Mother Nature's weather patterns and control the weather one way or the other, causing droughts or freezes or enforced hurricanes, even stalling a hurricane so it sits in one place for a long time. American leaders are also responding to a new federal report emphasizing the risk of climate change. In Appalachia, here in the mountains of North Carolina, and Tennessee, and Virginia, and South Carolina, local leaders and citizens have joined the call for action in light of the findings. The world is already 1 degree Celsius above a pre-industrial levels. The IPCC report, International Panel on Climate Change, report urges leaders to stop global warming at about 1.5 C instead of the 2 C limit on warming called for by the Paris Climate Agreement. Climate-related risks to health, livelihoods, food security, water supply, remember all these things, human security, economic growth are projected to increase with global warming. So climate-related risks to health, livelihoods, food security, water supply, human security, economic growth are projected to increase with global warming by 1.5 degrees Celsius. So why are they now reporting in this article calling it global warming? And early in this article, they called it climate change. Which is it? And how are they supposed to alter Mother Nature's activity? I don't believe there's statistics at all. And if you look at ice core samples, I've showed those pictures many times. We've had ice ages and warming periods in the last few thousand years many times. Look at the early 1930s and the crazy weather in the United States and the world at that time. It was beyond crazy then. Nothing like that is happening now, except they are apparently able to increase the ferociousness of the storms these days. At current greenhouse gas pollution levels, there's the key to this whole discussion. The Earth is projected to warm by 1.5 C by 2040. So the bottom line is they want to mandatory enforce regulations on we the people and worldwide. And also I have evidence they want to control the world with a communist world order. And they've been working at this for quite a while. So these two things I'm talking about go hand in hand. Okay, one more magazine I found in my local area. Something called the Mountain Express, a local newspaper here. I'm not going to believe what I saw in it. These are all published in the last week. This is how much propaganda is out there. Whether or not seven stories on the area's climate future, year in review 2018. So here it says Duke Energy continues construction of a gas-fired power plant. The utility is replacing its current coal-fired facility at Lake Julian with a 560 megawatt gas plant, which is projected to produce 60% fewer carbon dioxide emissions per megawatt hour of electricity generated. I do have a small problem with that. One, I'm not opposed to cleaner air by any means. They can put filters on those stacks. But I'm a little concerned about these power plants running on gas. What if they run out of gas? However, some local environmental groups have criticized the plant at looking the area into fossil fuel future instead of harvesting boldly into renewable energy. Here's another part of this article, whether or not. Local schools grow their sustainability degree programs. So they're even teaching this in the local schools, and people get degrees into this. This is serious business. It is part of what I call the global world order. So you have to pay attention. This is a deception. They're not being truthful. Area colleges have stepped up their efforts to train students in the necessary skills for transitioning away from a carbon-based economy. Warren Wilson College, for example, signed a partnership agreement with other schools allowing its students to complete a sustainable related master's program on an accelerated 5-year track. So they're not fooling around. And in some areas, it's even illegal to have a wood stove in your house for heating. So I suspect the legislation and enforcements on what we do, including driving cars and so much more, will be affected. It's like what they call austerity, which means all the citizens have to give up a little or a lot for the benefit of the whole. But of course, the elite who control the show will not be giving up anything, including their yachts and mansions. So don't believe this party line of social global world order communism. And when I read from this book, it'll make sense. Before I read from the book, I'm going to look at a couple more things. This is serious business. The social conditioning, fake news, propaganda, deception, and it brings about false ideas in people's minds. You call that mind control. But I looked up here, surviving a catastrophic power outage. So I've been watching that a lot in the news. They're saying to prepare for the grid to go down. And again, when I read from this book, all this is going to make sense, this material in the opening of this video. So there are 1,400,000 results. I just did this search, surviving a catastrophic power outage. Surviving a catastrophic power outage, how to strengthen an executive summary, the President's National Infrastructure Advisory Council. So what is it? The grid going down or climate change? Or people resisting a global world order? What's with the installation of artificial intelligence systems, facial recognition, microchipping our credit cards and microchipping the children and people? Legislation passed, something called Noahide laws, which apparently is an anti-Christian legislation that calls for the beheading of people who resist the worldwide religion they declare. Go look into that. Don't believe me. Surviving a catastrophic power change, surviving this power outage, quarterly business meetings, December 13th, 2018. NIAC catastrophic power outage study. Like I said, 1,400,000 results. Go watch videos on that topic if you haven't already seen the material. And there was this other website somebody recommended, something called the Conspiracy Archive. There's the link there on the top. So listen to this. It's all connected to this pursuit for a global world order. Bilderberg Tech, Information Elite Comes of Age by Terry Middleton. It pays to look closely at how Silicon Valley, Bilderberg all fit together. This isn't me. On a practical level, AI, artificial intelligence, offers enormous opportunities for everything from commercial exploitation of data, but it also leads to a lot of potential for weaponizing the computer systems and controlling people across the country. Another thing at this website, conspiracyarchive.com, please go look it up. Knight, Knigge, on the Illuminati, according to Knight, however you say his name, and other reflections according to the historical level. I'm just proving here there's just a plethora, a ton of information out there that there is something going on, and this global world order is planned and probably well underway. Murdoch's Illuminati, the expanded canvas of the National Geographic magazine, Conspiracy Roundup 131 2016, Militant Masonry, Masters and French Carboni, Frank Godlito, French Minister, Freemason, OSS, and CIA, 10 notable members of the Bavarian Illuminati, the influence of the Illuminati and Freemasonry on the German students' orders, and vice versa, Masonic emblems on coins, medallions during the French Revolution. So this stuff has been going on a long time. Masonic emblems and coins on coins and medallions during the French Revolution. So when I'm doing my research, I try to check into everything, and I do watch other videos, and I follow all different kinds of leads. And this is on Terry Medelson, and just on him I found 57,600 results. And Conspiracy Archive, I guess, is his website. So please, you can go watch his material, my material, so many other people's material. You can order books like I do and read the books and be astonished by what you find. All right, to the book, finally. Confessions of Stalin's Agent. So who, what, and where, and what did they say? You're not going to believe it. But we need to wake up to the truth about our reality and history and World War I and in between the Great Depression, preparations for World War II, the communist activity, World War II and after World War II, the creation of Israel, 9/11, and so much more. I've been going over this material over it and over it and over it. So according to the first page in this book, Kenneth Goff, this is my story, Kenneth Goff. And I already showed you that 239 PDF, Brainwashed into Slavery. He's got several books. I found this on archive.org. So I made one video there. So not only did I make a video, I ordered this book too and looked online to see what I could purchase. Introduction to Stalin's missionaries. So apparently across the United States they had all these missionaries. So when was this? (1948), after World War II. So what do you think he says? It's actually unbelievable what I read. You can see that I pre-read it. I took some notes I wrote on there. Underlined things. You better sit down for this. I was born and raised in a conservative southern Wisconsin community. While working on a weekly newspaper in 1935, I received a letter through the FERA, that would be the Federal Employment Relief Administration, informing me that I could attend without cost a workers' school at the University of Wisconsin. I accepted the offer and went to Wisconsin and enrolled. It was a typical New Deal. Remember, we had a Great Depression going on. And isn't that interesting if you think about it? A Great Depression going on. economic suffering to the 100th degree. And meanwhile, the communists are here trying to promote communism and a revolution, saying that they are going to save you from all the suffering and overthrow your government. Wait a minute. Isn't the communists the elite Bolshevik Jewish people, the Illuminati, the Zionists, and the banksters, the Illuminati? Didn't they control the money supplies? So I suspect not only was there a Great Depression going on in the United States, but there was a Great Depression going on all over the world. And you'll see that's in this material and other books I've been going over. And these people controlled the money supply. So it wasn't our governments who were causing the Great Depression, while these people were trying to instigate people into joining the communist parties. It was these banksters who were causing all the problems, the elites who controlled the world, who brought us World War I and World War II, who were also trying to convince we, the people, that communism, i.e., enforced socialism, i.e., global warming, climate change legislation, sustainability, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and so much more, that these things are needed so that life can be better, when they were causing the hardship between World War I and World War II. Just FYI, think about the dates. So he gets a letter from the Federal Employment Relief Administration. I guess that would be connected to the federal government, unless it was a deceptive document, but informing him he could go to a workers' school at the University of Wisconsin. I accepted the offer and went to Wisconsin and enrolled. It was a typical New Deal project, completely communist controlled. We were daily taught in a classroom how to organize a workers' society, the alleged advantages of a socialist or communist system. So it isn't me connecting those two dots. It's right here in this book. Organize a workers' society, the alleged advantages of a socialist or communist system were constantly discussed. In the evening, students would gather around the piano and sing revolutionary songs such as The International. Pause your computer and read it if you doubt me. Now, isn't that interesting? So who do you suppose the International is and the Communist is? Well, we know it was the Bolshevik Jewish people, and apparently communism is Judaism, according to many videos and books I have. For example, the Henry Ford's books I have, Aspects to Jewish Power, The International Jew, The World's Foremost Problem, The International Jew. So it isn't me saying the International Jew and the word communism are all one and the same. And of course, prior to World War II, they were announcing in the newspapers that the world was going to give to the Jews for a new world order to right all the wrongs that they have endured over the past couple thousand years. And they are, of course, anti-Christian. And you can look up in the internet that the cross offends the Jews. So this is definitely an anti-Christian movement, and that's in this book right here I'm reading from. Just saying, these things are undeniable. One night, a student invited a group of us to attend a closed communist lecture. This was, I think, back in 1935, before World War II, going on in the United States. I remember I went over the material where they were during World War II, they had given Russia, the communists, the international Jewish elite who control the world and the banking systems, who brought us the worldwide Great Depressions. The United States was giving them all of the equipment, planes, trains, ships, and nuclear design plans, and plates to print U.S. currency or wartime currencies that could be exchanged through the U.S. money system. Who do you suppose controlled America at that time? Who controls it now is a much more important question. Okay. So they were invited to a communist lecture. The meeting was held in the basement of a home of a party member. The speaker was a young man from New York by the name of Cohn. He gave a report on the 7th World Congress of the Communist Party, COHEN, and I do believe that is a hugely Jewish last name. So you can tie these things together. And of course, a lot of Jewish people in America are not aware of this, but it did say in that previous material, though, in the newspaper in New York Times in 1940, that all the Jews would be given an opportunity to serve to make the world a better place. And they are communist, the people who want the global world order, and part of the secret societies, Freemasons, Illuminates, Club of Rome, and all these other organizations where they swear a pledge of allegiance under threat of death not to divulge the secrets and to obey the master. And apparently, even in Morals and Dogma, Albert Pike's book, The Bible for the Freemasons, says Lucifer is their deity. Lucifer is equated with Satanism, and I have discovered that's equated with the Kabbalah and mystery religion of Babylon. There is a spiritual component to this conversation. So he's in this classroom, and the teacher, he called us liberals. I can't make this up. I better show you. So we hear that word liberals all the time. So he called us liberals and said we were like armies without generals and plans to carry out our campaign. Prior to World War II, he said our hit or miss policy would leave the working classes to destruction. Only by developing trained leadership could we attain the goal of a new world order or international communism. So if anybody doubts when I keep saying globalism or new world order, that it's not communism and that's not organized by the international Jew, which is the world's foremost problem for the past couple thousand years, they said that. They had all kinds of discussions in governments all over the world, and Jewish people were banished, exiled, even massacred, police made to wear badges, couldn't own property. Why? It's right here. So if people want to know what's going on, you can find this book. You can go on archive.org, probably look it up and get it for free. Cohn declared that the Communist Party was the vanguard of the masses and plans to carry out our campaign. Oops, I missed my place. And its membership comprised of generals for the coming revolution. So all these people that were going to these communist meetings back in 1935, probably 1945, 55, 65, 75, even today. And this has been in the news. It's still going on. A lot of them are probably in Washington today, disguised as Republicans or Democrats. And who knows about the presidents? A lot of suspicious questions and activity there. During the course of the meeting, he made some remarks against the Lafayette brothers, which caused me to protest. This angered the speaker. I was literally thrown out by two husky fellows. Within a year, the speaker and I had become close friends. We had many laughs over the experience. So we do know these organizations do not want to hear any discussions on any of these topics that they talk about New Age and pansexualism and globalism. They don't want a frank, honest discussion. That cannot be tolerated. But it gets much worse when I read on here. My parents were old-fashioned Christians. Sunday mornings always found the entire family in church. It was a little white frame building. Here we barefooted boys would gather with other youngsters around the old coal stove, in one corner and be taught from the pages of God's Word. After Sunday school, we joined our parents for morning worship. This was usually followed by a picnic dinner on the lawn of the church. There would be all-day services some Sundays, lasting until late in the evening. Then we would start home in the family automobile under the moonlit skies, with my father leading the group in singing such songs as "Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing," or "Shall We Gather at the River," "In the Sweet By and By," and the scores of other grand old hymns of the faith. Yeah, it was tough times back then to deal with all that. That's what probably young people think today. As he says in this book, a little sense of humor he has, these were the unbearable conditions from which the Communist Party was sent into Wisconsin to save us from. So the family, healthy family, going to church, going to school, playing in the yard barefoot, all this other stuff, the communists were here to save us from this unbearable situation. And look what they brought us. Even in my lifetime, bringing us the Pokemon chips, the Illuminati card game with all the signals and symbols of things that were going to happen in the world. That did happen. All kinds of other symbolisms everywhere in satanic rituals. They wanted to eliminate these families like this going to church and living healthy lives. Now we get fluoride in the water and toxins in our food and busy streets and highways that you can't move an inch sometimes. All intentional to create all this chaos and anarchy so people will accept the coming global world order. Then the day came when headquarters of the denomination decided to sell our little old dilapidated church building. So the church him and his family went to, apparently the headquarters for that church decided to sell it. This brought about a change in our lives. We had to attend church in town. Services were conducted differently there. The pastor proclaimed a new faith. Like I said before, the communists did infiltrate the churches. They said they were going to do that during the communist hearings in between World War I and World War II. It was quite an uproar about these topics back then. People were aware. But I suspect the communists have won and control the media with the Illuminati and the elite and the banking system. So they can control what we all learn now. And most of us are aware that is the truth. So the pastor proclaimed a new faith. He called it the social gospel. This was the first time I had ever heard the validity of the scriptures questioned. We were told that many of the Bible stories were mere allegories. The meetings were quite formal. So they were preaching to the people now that all the stuff you've learned in the past are just allegories. The Bible is not real. Jesus was just a myth. He really didn't exist. And there are plenty of videos on YouTubes and websites proclaiming and teaching this, in many books and many magazines. I did pick up this one in the grocery store the other day. I think I'll make a video on it, a magazine here. I think it was like $12. So the communists don't want that religion to exist. All right, back to the book here. Each Sunday morning, the preacher would march in while the choir sang, "Praise God, from whom all blessings flow." Then he would make some announcements. After that, we listened to a canned sermon devoid of spiritual power, anointing, and feverishly. So they were not really creating any kind of spiritual power or belief type of sermons. And Rabbi Marvin Antelman, I made videos on his books to eliminate the opate. This rabbi, leader of the Jewish Congress in the United States, tells all that they were going to destroy the people's belief in God and spirituality. Now remember, even in the Jewish world, there is a divide. They used to have something called the Torah Jews, Torah rabbis. It was one of the Bible books, closely similar to the Old Testament. But now, most of the Jewish rabbis and peoples that are into these religions are into the Talmud, Zohar, which is more closely related to the mystery religion of Babylon, which is the Kabbalah or Luciferianism, Satanism, the same teachings they teach in these secret societies, Freemasons, etc., Rosicrucians, alchemy, witchcraft, also sorcery, which they have been accused of throughout the last couple thousand years. And apparently, a video I was watching this morning, the two people were discussing in the video that child and human sacrifices are alive and well in the United States and world today. The Church of Satan and this mystery demonic religion is thriving, surviving, and growing. Facts. So who controls the world? The people vying for the globalist or the citizens that are patriotic and nationalist. Even in the United States, if you're nationalist, they have these rallies where they have white supremacists and stuff like that, and they'll accuse you of being a Nazi. They're trying to discredit it. But back to the book. One day I asked him about some of the things he was teaching. Without the least hesitation, he disclaimed belief in such rock-ribbed truths as the inspiration of God's Word and Christ's virgin birth, the blood atonement, and other doctrines of the faith. He said we must build a better world based upon the brotherhood of man. So you suppose they fulfilled their pledge that they were going to give the world to these communist, Jewish, Illuminati, Kabbalist people into the Talmud and the Zohar, and not the Jewish people or Christians who believe that Jesus was the Savior. They are not compatible. One of them has to be destroyed. Apparently, the demonic Satanism forces are winning if you go down your city streets and you look around to what's going on in the world and everywhere else, and in the news. And these fear-mongering pieces about climate change, terrorism, sustainability, and anti-national press releases, and all this other crazy stuff in the news, accusing Korea or Iran or China or Russia, and so much more. All those countries since 9/11. All right. He said we must build a better world based upon the brotherhood of man. And that's the words exactly like that in the Freemasonic literature, i.e., the brotherhood of man. And we've all heard about the white brotherhood or the Arab brotherhood or the Muslim brotherhood or ISIS in the Middle East, wife of Osiris, where all the obelisks are in our city squares. and Osiris was the god of the underworld. And of course, Isis and Osiris, brother and sister, husband and wife, had a son Horus, represented as the all-seeing eye on the back of the dollar bill. Sorry about my speaking. Sometimes I get a little tongue-tied or worn out. So anyways, this is back in 1935. He's going to these classes, 1951 or something. He wrote 45. He wrote this book. And he says here, he was taught that this teacher, this preacher, who was preaching the anti-God Bible philosophy now, he said we must build a better world based upon the brotherhood of man and all the things I had talked about. I made a note here. Look what they have done since. Oh my. That's my note when I was reading it. Propaganda, social conditioning, mind control is going on. It's been going on for a long time. And if people want to look it up, they'll see it's true. And if people don't want to do anything about it, there's not much more I can do than make these videos. Or you can do, but tell your family and friends. I guess in the spiritual world, we'll get an E for effort. It's the thought that counts. And I believe that's what faith and believing God is all about. I think we don't have to fear these people who want to bring us what's mentioned in these pages coming up. My faith was further attacked in public and high school by the evolutionary hypothesis. And they now say that evolutionary growth or the human evolution could not be the case. It's clearly intelligent design, the complexity of DNA and everything else. And also, evolutionary theory would not apply when one considers that prior to the Great Flood, verifiable fact all over the world, there were advanced civilization with probably even anti-gravity devices and technologies to build those huge monuments all over the world. Even in the caves in Ecuador and the Machu Picchu lines down in Peru, all over the world. So evolution really is not an explanation to how we got where we are now. There apparently was an advanced civilization prior to the Great Flood, and since then a lot of the technology was lost or known by some individuals, and we have regained a lot of it, apparently. And a lot of it apparently through psychic means or people receiving information from beings from the other side, the invisible reality, another dimension. Even Nikolai Tesla said that was the case, as well as many other famous people whose fathers and families were into the church and preaching and praying, i.e., they were communicating with the spiritual world. And of course, now they put fluoride in the water that calcifies your pineal gland in the middle of your brain, which disables your ability to communicate with the higher spiritual world. Did you know that? As youngsters, we were told that God had nothing to do with creation, and that the human family evolved from a one-celled animal called an amoeba. And again, it doesn't really apply. There was an advanced civilization before our civilization, and who knows how many advanced civilizations were before that. I don't think God created us yesterday. I think the human beings have been around a long time. Apparently, the history going back through Atlantis or Lemuria or the Great Flood, obviously there was a Great Flood. The evidence is all over the world, and obviously there was a civilization before it. God, whatever being God is, angels, whatever, instructed Noah to build the ark. And the Hopi Indians and other indigenous tribes all over the world talk about otherworldly beings or other types of beings, preparing them for the Great Flood, building underground facilities or in the mountains, etc. All over the world, these stories exist. So my point is the evolutionary theory was something to discredit religious teachings and destroy the churches intentionally, which is definitely anti-communist, and we have to ask ourselves, who were the communists? Of course, they were the Bolshevik Jewish people, and they were the people looking for a global world order, which is the Illuminati, secret societies, Freemasons, Rosicrucians, Knights of Columbus, Knights of Malta, all these organizations, Bohemian Grove, Bilderberger Group, Club of Rome, and so many more. You can look into that, go online and say secret societies, just search it and you'll find some websites with long lists of them. These people have permeated our entire world. People don't know what to believe anymore. Back to the book. I had no idea then that I was being conditioned. So here's this author writing this book back in 1948, attending these communist courses and lectures in the middle 1935-36, between World War I and World War II. And after the war, he is admitting, and he was working for a newspaper, apparently a smart man, Kenneth Goff, author of this book, that he was being conditioned in heart and mind to receive the atheism of communism, for years to come. Without this background of doubt, it is to be questioned if I would have succumbed to communism as taught in the New Deal school at Madison, Wisconsin. When I finished my course in the FERA, F-E-R-A, I received several invitations to attend communist rallies. At one such meeting, I was introduced to Gene Dennis, district organizer of the party, stationed in Milwaukee. He is now its national secretary. Dennis invited me to his office at 113 East Wells Street. While there on May 2nd, 1936, I joined the Communist Party. I signed a membership card which pledged my allegiance to the Communist International for the revolutionary overthrow of the USA government. People don't want to believe this. And in its place, the establishment of a Soviet America. I then assumed another name so that if my membership book was ever found, it would not be traced to me. So these people do operate underground even today, 2019, January 2nd. Apparently, these are the forces behind what's going on in our world today, installing all those surveillance systems, facial recognition systems, monitoring systems with computers, your credit card usage, your phone calls, where you go, everything you do. Another odd thing, the other day, I picked up a check from my employment, and it was only $1,600, and I deposited it. I didn't want any cash back, and the teller had to see another teller for permission to do it, and it was even drawn on the same bank that I banked with, a major bank. We all know the name of it, Number One. And then after that was all done, and I had much more money than that in that particular business bank account, I said I need to take out $600 in cash, and I've had a business for 20 years, so $600 in cash is nothing serious in my opinion. But again, the teller had to request the manager to come over and give her permission to do that. And I've been noticing this every time I go banking these days. So they're monitoring everything minutely. Why is that? Is something imminent? It just goes to show you, current events has everything to do with all this stuff in these books I'm going over. Confessions of a Stalin's Agent. So anyways, the author says, I chose the alias John Keats and received the number 18B2. The latter was to be used if the party went underground. So the communists were trying to keep a low cover. I was told that I would not have to give up my religious beliefs. All they asked was that I read the material on religion as prescribed by Moscow. An official of the party later explained with brutal candor that if I clung to any form of religion, I would die along with all the ministers and priests of the United States after the Revolution. 1936. We've had World War II since then, 9/11, and seemingly the preparations for this worldwide revolution are continuing. Clearly, it says here, just like they did in Russia in the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, I call it an invasion, espionage, assisted by elites and militaries from all over the world, to abduct the Tsar and his family and take over the whole country, create an Iron Curtain from 1917 right up until World War II. And then after World War II, they got more countries behind the Iron Curtain that were being converted into communism. And it says here, he would die if he kept his religious beliefs, along with all ministers and priests of the United States after the Revolution. Dennis said, his instructor, I guess, dialectic materialism and religion don't mix. Anyone with religious tendencies would be a menace to the communist state. He gave me a number of anti-religious books to read in the hope that I would quickly renounce my faith. I asked him about the thousands of modernist ministers we have defended and furthered the communist cause. So a lot of ministers had joined the churches to defend the communist cause and lead people away from the spiritual beliefs of the religion into this evolutionary theory. It was all intentional. I keep saying that. It's in these books. So he asked him, what about all these modernist ministers? And his leader says, he replied, these liberal chameleons are of great value at present, but once our goal is reached, they will either have to change their belief or pay the price with their heads, along with the rest. And I talk about the passage in Secret of Noahide Laws, which calls any religion that's deemed false. If you believe in it, you're accused of being a heresy, and the punishment by that is by beheading. And if you look up on the internet, apparently the governments have purchased 30,000 plus or minus guillotines, built FEMA camps, coffins in all kinds of fields, and all kinds of preparations for a worldwide revolution. 2015, we saw Jade Helm 15, where they were having all those military exercises all over the USA, doing false martial law, door-to-door events all over the country, moving tanks and trucks and jeeps and equipment, and testing artificial intelligence software. Because apparently, software will be making the decisions, not human beings, when they pull off this event. They can't trust human beings to do what has to be done, which is described in these pages. Even so far, you've heard it. Communism was presented to me as a 20th century Americanism. That's the 1900s. Bruder and Foster were built up as the Washington and Lincoln of the day. So apparently they had two teachers that were communist, Bruder and Foster, and they were made out to be Washington and Abraham Lincoln of our day. Large posters were displayed at all mass meetings showing the American flag alongside the Soviet flag, with pictures of Bruder and Foster, Washington and Lincoln in the background. You call that social conditioning or what? All right, so before I continue on with the book, just want to point out a couple more books I got in the mail today. Propaganda for War: How the United States was conditioned to fight the Great War of 1914 to 1918. Stuart Halsey Ross. So I'm collecting more books on these topics, proving what I'm trying to say. World War I, World War II were planned wars for the overthrow of many countries and conditioning us for communism, i.e., globalism, i.e., the fulfillment of biblical prophecy of an antichrist and all that. I know people don't want to believe it, but it's in this material. And who controls the United States? Big thick book. Look at this. I just got this in the mail today. The Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Aid. Apparently, when this book came out, it was big news. Let me read the inside of this book. What is the impact of the Israel Lobby on U.S. foreign policy? And is it in America's national interest? The Israel Lobby by John Mearsheimer of the University of Chicago and Stephen Walt of Harvard's John F. Kennedy School of Government was one of the most controversial articles in recent memory. Originally published in the London Review of Books of March 2006. The essay provoked both howls of courage and cheers of gratitude for examining one of the most taboo issues in America. Why is it the most taboo issue in America? Of course, anybody who talks about the Jewish people is accused of being an anti-Semite. You talk about nationalism, you're accused of being a Nazi. You talk about that you're not going along with the new age transgenderism, pansexualism, you're accused of being a Christian hater. This is all anti-family rhetoric trying to bring all the people into the atheist arena. The impact of the Israel Lobby in U.S. foreign policy, remember 9/11, according to the New York Times Magazine, it slammed into an opinion-making world with a Category 5 force. So this book hit the United States with a Category 5 hurricane force in 2006. Some people were trying to get the truth out there. Back to this book. Confessions of a Stalin agent, all the communism training going on in the United States, operating underground, stealth and deception, trying to discredit the churches, infiltrate them, teaching people to be more atheists than believing in the spiritual world. It goes much further than this. Listen on. During the Spanish Civil War of 1936, so many people don't know all these other wars were going on by these instigators of revolutions, the communists, the Kabbalist, Zionist, Jewish banking elite. Not all Jewish people. Benjamin Friedman, in his famous speech, tells all. Go look it up. The other books, many of them, dozens and dozens and dozens of books I've gone over, talk about all these things and who was behind World War I, World War II, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the Chinese Revolution, the communists, and who are the communists? And their religion, and it's an anti-Christian, non-compatible religion. There is no Judeo-Christian society. It's incompatible. They say it's incompatible, and it's in these pages. They teach it's incompatible, but they lie. Propaganda, social conditioning, propaganda. All right, so the Spanish Civil War of 1936, the 2 battalions of American communists were named after Washington and Lincoln. So in the Spanish Civil War, over there in Spain, I suppose, they had 2 battalions of American communist troops named after Washington and Lincoln. It was a common thing to see in our meeting places large posters of Lenin and Washington side by side, draped with the red flag, displaying the hammer and the sickle. The sickle is for the Grim Reaper, and the hammer is to smash those people who won't go along, who are resistors. What do you think it's for? And they use that iron fist all the time. But people are so conditioned and so brain dead, they don't see that this is coming. Why? I don't know. All right. I was told that I could deny being a member of the Communist Party, but never to make any statement damaging to the reputation of the Soviet Union. It was presented to us as the fatherland of all workers. It's a deception. It says it in this book. The people, meanwhile, in Russia at the time of this were being slaughtered. Christians and other good people after World War I, right up until World War II. And then after that, Russia grew. This is a really interesting story here. But these countries in gray in the middle of this picture, bordering Russia, were free countries prior to World War II. You can see the boot of Italy there, and Germany is cut in half, and you can see where the Iron Curtain was after World War II. Those countries were free countries prior to World War II. World War II started because Britain and some other countries were making accusations that Germany was invading those countries, when the truth is those countries spoke German and wanted to be part of a greater Germany. So to prevent Germany from getting those countries in gray, they had World War II. And after World War II, they gave those countries to communist Russia. Do you get the depth of what I'm saying? The communists were handed all those countries after World War II. World War II was started and conducted because of the accusation that Germany was trying to invade them. All Germany was trying to do was get through some of those countries to some of the cities where there were German people. They wanted Poland to give them a corridor 1 mile wide through the country. They didn't want World War II. They'd already been defeated in World War I. A lot of people don't know the truth. And apparently down here on the bottom, Yugoslavia, Serbia, whatever you want to call it, as you can see, is not gray like the rest of those countries. And it was trying to obtain a lot of land from all those countries, including Germany, prior to World War II, so it could create a greater Serbian empire. So Germany had the Serbians who wanted to have expansionism, Russia, who had its own issues, and Britain had its jealousies and issues because Germany was prospering and growing, and a lot of countries around it, like Austria, wanted to join it, Prussia. So there's more than meets the eye here. But what's really kills me is the World War II was fought, so Germany couldn't have those countries in gray. After World War II, they gave them to communist Russia. From 1945 to 1991, they were controlled by the communists. And Yugoslavia wanted a greater empire, and the things I've been reading about the Serbians and the Yugoslavians is quite horrendous. I need to share that in another book review. I have all these pictures on that after reading the book on the Serbian people and World War II and the properties that were given to the communists. And then, of course, we know since 1946 to 1991, they had a Cold War where people in America were crawling under their desk because they were told there might be a nuclear explosion. They were spending gazillions and billions of American dollars on it, manufacturing more weapons and technologies to bring about the global world order and destroy the Christian nations as we know them. Look how big the Soviet Union is here, where they had handed all those countries over after World War II. And they had the Iron Curtain. Yugoslavia, Romania, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, half of Germany, Poland. Quite bizarre, don't you think? That's why they fought World War II, so Germany couldn't be any bigger than Germany, because this island of United Kingdom here in the center of this video, Britain, was an island and wasn't growing as well as the continental territory of Germany. Of course, Germany would grow into a bigger empire being on the mainland, surrounded by countries that spoke German and wanted to join it. But Yugoslavia, Serbia had expansion plans. Britain wanted to control the world, and Russia had bigger plans of being the leader of the global world order. I have all these pictures you can find on the Yahoo image site. The political cartoon above shows a person on the eastern block of the Iron Curtain that was trying to escape to the western side. The cartoon also shows the lack of total effort on the western side to free people separated by the Iron Curtain. So Britain and all the NATO countries in America since 1946 to 1991 did not try to free those people. Don't people find that odd? Were they in support with the communists behind the pursuit of a global world order? It seems to be the case. Meanwhile, they're spending tons of American money to build up Israel and develop all kinds of technological weapons, which apparently are going to be used against the world's peoples. The cartoon probably made to show members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the European Community on the West with the United States that they needed to take extreme actions to free the people in need and not avoid confrontation any longer. The author of this cartoon appears to be an opponent of isolationism and not wanting a reoccurrence of American indifference like it showed in the beginning of World War II. So back to this book. I was told that I could deny being a member of the Communist Party, but never to make any statement damaging the reputation of the Soviet Union. It was presented to us as the fatherland of all workers. We were not told, however, that the laboring classes of Russia lived in chains of slavery with the last vestige of human liberty abolished. That's what they did in Russia between World War I and World War II. And then, of course, after World War II, they gave Russia more countries, and it continued until 1991. Does anybody else see something wrong with this picture? So anyways, this author, Kenneth Goff, says, I was assigned to the special branch of the party made up of individuals who of necessity had to hide their affiliations. In some cases, even other members could not know that these particular people belonged to the party. This was required because a slip of the tongue could handicap our work with outside groups. Now, you know, all these people in the secret societies swear allegiance that they will never divulge the goings on under threat of death and obey the master. So I suspect that secret societies are clearly in bed with the Zionist, the Communist, the Kabbalist, the mystery religion of Babylon, the Satanist, all vying for a global world order, and they're using sustainability, global warming, climate change, terrorism, economic destruction, droughts, environmental issues, poisoning us, toxins in our food and water, medical establishment destroyed and taken over, pharmaceutical industries controlling the churches now, the education facilities, the movie industry, the TVs, newspapers, magazines, cartoons for the children, TV programming, Modern Family maybe? Or how about Two and a Half Men or Seinfeld, where Jerry or Charlie gets to sleep with a different girl during every show, almost. Social conditioning, anti-Christian activity, atheism, sex is fun. You can do whatever you want. Pansexualism, transgenderism. You don't like being a guy, get converted to a girl. You don't like being a female, you can be a man. People are buying this stuff hook, line, and sinker. What are you going to do? All right, the party branches were called units or cells. Where do we hear this thing about sleeping cells, organized groups all over the United States, ready to pounce on us with bombs and guns and ever? You suppose it's the communist parties like it says in this book? The party branches were called units or cells and usually met once a week to plan their programs. One member was chosen as a go-between in reporting activities to the district organizer and for bringing back his instructions. Individual members of the special branch usually reported directly to the district office for orders. They were seldom allowed to visit the headquarters together. The general membership of the Communist Party is never disclosed to the public. Only a few leaders in each state admit they are members. These men become mouthpieces for the disclosing the stand of the party on matters of public concern. The great body of members remains under the cover so that no accurate check can be made as to the strength of the organization. This policy has led many to believe the party to be weak. So how many of them are active in America today? Who organizes those women's marches, the gay pride parades, the marches on Washington? And when they happen all across the country. White supremacist events. These people play both sides. They want to rile people up. They want to create more chaos and anarchy. They want people to beg for this communist rulership, not knowing it's atheism, anti-Christian. And they even want to legalize drugs and produce more beer breweries and alcohol and party in the streets. But what happens, if you've ever watched the Pinocchio movie, the original one or the second one, and Pinocchio and his pals get drawn into that carnival on the island, and then they all get enslaved. Even Caesar did that 1,000 years ago. He had the events in the arena where the lions were eating humans. They called it the games. And it kept the people all appeased until the Roman Empire fell apart. Party till you die, I guess. Reference is sometimes made to the small vote in general elections. The party does not allow its power to be shown through votes cast in its presidential candidates. It only uses elections as channels for carrying on propaganda to further the destruction of our republic. They want to destroy the United States, create a Soviet America. The system which gives them the right to vote. And they changed the names. Now, of course, it's called globalism and Rainbow Coalition, Agenda 21. And they have all that stuff in the newspapers I showed you about climate change, blaming we people. Those are so they can pass laws and make more controls to control us and restrict our freedoms, i.e. communism, which is also Kabbalism, biblical prophecy, anti-Christian Satanism. And I can say this, I've been reading so many books, and it says more damaging information in this book here. There are more communists in America today than there were in Russia before the revolution. So they're more prepared today to do what they did in Russia. And back then, they killed over 100 million Christians and other good people, destroyed the Christian churches, a huge purge over 15 years plus or minus. So here they, with all the installed facial recognition systems, computer monitoring systems, weaponized microwave systems, and artificial intelligence apps and software programs. Oh my, it promises to be one heck of a slaughter of humans event to wipe out Christianity and other religions from the face of the earth. Who are these predators? What kind of religion do they have? Is it really devils and demons like the statues they're putting up? The goddess of Kali on the Empire State Building? The devil dropping from the sky during that tunnel opening in Switzerland, and those other people acting demonic in that ritual over there in Switzerland? Or the CERN Collider, the ceremonies they had there? Or the Eurovision singing contest in Europe like American Idol? Or the Madonna with the ritual during the Super Bowl halftime show, clearly satanic rituals, Katy Perry, Beyonce, even people with horns and everything else. It's all across the country. You can't make this stuff up. There is a spiritual component to this, and I suspect we better wake up. So there are more communists in America today than there were in Russia before the revolution, when they killed up to 100 million people in a Rents.com report, admittingly in a Israeli newspaper, 25 million. Some people say 66 million. And of course, millions and untold millions killed in China during that revolution after. And who knew about the Spanish Revolution going on and the worldwide depression everywhere between World War I and World War II? So you think all this stuff was orchestrated and they have a plan? They say they have a plan. A global world currency, a cashless society, one world religion. What do you suppose it's going to be? Why did they pass the Noahide laws in secret? Please go look it up. Why did they buy 30,000 guillotines? Why recently are there videos and reports that they ordered a bunch of guillotine blades from Mexico recently? Why did they need spare sharp blades? Why do semi-tractor trailers drivers exclaim they delivered a bunch of signs that said martial law? Why do they say there might be a electric grid shutdown, and everybody is to have some supplies and stay at home? Should we stay at home, and if we're Christian, until they come get us? And it even says in this book that they're going to behead the Christians? When does obvious become obvious? And in Spain before their civil war. So they had more communists in Spain before their civil war. Since the so-called dissolution of the Communist Party, party membership has increased by leaps and bounds. So when they said they dissolved the Communist Party, according to this author, the membership is leaps and bounds increased. And of course, they have a lot of other names for organizations these days. And they seem to be able to pull these people out like pulling a rabbit out of the hat every time they have a protest or some kind of pride parade or something. I guess somebody in these secret societies just makes a phone call and they have all their people on their membership list, maybe Facebook, or they can tweet them or text them, and everybody shows up for another protest for this thing or that thing. They have an invisible army and they can instigate people and cause riots like we've all seen. All that propaganda, a white guy or a white cop shoots a black person, and then incidences of people doing detrimental things to gay people or to whoever. It's always in the news, I notice. They want to keep the tension up to ready for this worldwide revolution, so it seems. Following my induction into the Communist Party, I was sent to the Debs Labor School in Milwaukee. This was one of the many communist training centers operating in all parts of the United States. Such schools were usually located in thickly populated industrial sections. The largest one is in New York City. And does anybody believe that the stock market is not controlled and manipulated? When they crashed the system, like apparently they caused the Great Depression all over the world after World War I, when they took over the USA money supply in 1913, 6 months prior to World War I. So they need our money system so they can siphon off trillions for them to buy up and control much of the world, which is what they've done since 1900 and 1913, the last 100 years. This has been a concentrated effort to bring about the reality of a global world order. And they will plan on beheading people who will not deny Christianity and Jesus, fulfilling biblical prophecy. Again, what are you going to do? You got to have faith and believe, not fear. Prior to 1935, students were sent to Moscow for their training courses, which lasted from 6 months to 2 years. After that date, schools were established in the United States with half the expenses of maintaining them contributing to the Communist International and the balance by the local party. These centers of instruction were organized by the late Abraham Markoff, national head of the communist school system in the United States. So I went and looked up Mr. Markoff, Abraham, who was in charge of the communist school in the United States. And I was asking myself, I wonder if this man is Jewish. And lo and behold, he was. The fifth one from the bottom. There's actually two of them there. I suspect he's the 1939 one when he died. Brooklyn, New York cemetery. So when you do tie this in with the Jewish people, you're not deceiving anybody. It's true. They do have a particular religion that is incompatible with Christianity. They do intend to do the things that are in this book, so I believe. So this Abraham Markoff, he of course acted with direct orders from Moscow. Every such school is a well of ideological poison from which young citizens drink atheist and revolutionary ideas. Earl Broders says in his book, Communism in the United States, page 310, the workers' school is that initiation, is that institution where we are providing our leaders with weapons, ideological weapons for Marxism and Leninism to be used in the mass struggle. George Dimiroff, president of the World Comintern, co-midterm, said the masses, that's we the people, get this, must be stirred to struggle. And communist schools must be used to help them grasp the mighty, fertile, all-powerful Bolshevik theory, Bolshevik Jewish theory. And they invaded Russia after World War I, espionage event. I wouldn't call it a revolution. I would call it invasion, secretly supported by governments all over the world, military troops at all the train stations, had an iron curtain around the country for 10 or 15, right up until World War II, and apparently slaughtering 100 million Christians and other good people, destroying the Christian churches. Anybody who thinks that they don't still control Russia today has to be in denial, because they've gained so much more control all over the world, as I've gone over in many of my book reviews. They're getting closer and closer to what we can call D-Day, when they pull the trigger, and like they have the warnings right now about the grid collapsing, and you should stock up on water and food and just stay at home while the military does its thing. They talk about sealed indictments on Q and Anonymous, and they still dump chemicals in the sky, and they're installing more cell phone microwave transmitters and algorithms that finish your sentences when you're on Google and Siri and Echo and Alexa and all those things. They have a system that's going into place. Everybody carrying around the new cell phones that can listen to you, photograph. Oh my, you lose your breath just talking about this stuff. So much of it. But if you want to know what's going on, just go get some of these books and read them. Look around you. See what's happening. See the stock market plunging. See the threats about the grid collapsing. Find out what they were talking about back then. The teachings of Marx, Engels, Lenin, and Stalin. We received instructions every day on how to organize and promote the revolution, how to bore from within existing organizations and lead them towards the left, the progressives, the pansexual, transgender. And if you don't like that and you're Christian, you must be a hater, they say. And all these videos on YouTube I've been watching by a lot of these New Agers and all these other weird teachings that I've been watching, they keep saying, history's been rewritten. There really wasn't a Jesus. Hey, they even inserted an extra 1,000 years. History, none of it's what has been told to us. It's all been contrived. Do you believe that? Jesus wasn't really born 2,000 years ago. It wasn't more than 1,100 years ago. And they say that whole conspiracy was cooked up and created in Italy, according to one video I was watching this morning. Do you believe that? People do believe this craziness that they're teaching with atheism, and that globalism is better than nationalism, and they can control all the money supply and banks in the world and crush the systems every time they want. They want to bring us a Hunger Games movie type of reality. So it seems. The people they leave alive, FYI, because they plan on depopulating the planet. I've gone over the books. I've showed the material. It's easy to see. The congested highways, it's all intentional. They could put up more train systems. They could alleviate those problems with some smart thinking, but they don't want to. They want you and I to feel the pain. So when they pull the trigger, everybody will embrace it and then believe in overpopulation or climate change is the issue. Don't worry that you can see they're dumping chemicals in the sky, or all the HARP transmitters installed all over the world, or the microwave towers, or the ELF towers, and all the other transmission-directed energy beam weapons they're using. Don't believe any of that, even if you see it. Believe what the communists and the Illuminati and the Zionists are telling you, and the Church of Satan is telling you. Matter of fact, go get a demonic demon tattoo. Join the rest of the people. So they teach us. It's like they gave out the Pokemon chips to the kids 20-something years ago. And now a lot of people look like those little Pokemon monsters. They understand psychology. Do you get it? Got it? This concerns me when I read this stuff. We received instructions every day on how to organize and promote the revolution, how to bore from within existing organizations and lead them toward the left. Gene Dennis told us one evening not to report to school the following day, but to wander around the downtown area of Milwaukee until we received further instructions. So I went down to the main business section the next morning and did some window shopping. Around 10 o'clock, while gazing in a window, a newsboy tapped me on the elbow and asked me if I wanted to buy a Milwaukee Sentinel. I said no, that I had already read it. He continued to insist that I purchase one, and I ordered him away. Then he handed me a copy and said, "Read, comrade. This is Milwaukee, USA." I took the paper, and across the top was written in pencil, "Go to Blues Hall." I immediately went there and found many of the comrades had already arrived. Many were coming in every minute. When assembled, we were told that if the party ever went underground, it would be necessary to meet this way. We were instructed how to dismantle and assemble mimeograph machines and to print handbills if the party was forced to operate secretly. Then Gene Davis gave us the blueprint of how to seize a city when the revolution breaks. So the communists have plans, and now they have these advanced technologies, AI, surveillance systems, microwave transmitters, how to seize a city when the revolution breaks. Or as President Donald Trump and the new executive orders or the stuff on the news and the TV, when the electric grid goes down, stay at home, get some supplies, and just let the government take care of everything. Don't worry. Don't fear the global world order. When they bring us the Antichrist, Luciferic deity, some kind of guy called God, if you don't swear allegiance to it, off with your head. Don't worry about it. Biblical prophecy, you lose your soul. I think if we wake up, we can stop this madness. It is madness, is it not? President John Kennedy said a secret society was controlling our world, and it's a repugnant to the American way of life, and he was going to expose it. Go listen to his famous speech on the internet. It's everywhere. And he's dead right after that. Benjamin Friedman, his famous speech. Don't believe anything I'm saying. I read from these books for this purpose. So you can get some credibility about what some guy back in 1948 wrote, who was, when did he write this? 48. When he was in the Communist Party between World War I and World War II. And apparently after World War II, he wrote this book and many others you can find on archive.org. This is 139 part 2 in my series. Part 1 was by his other book, America Being Brainwashed. Go watch that video if you haven't seen it. Go on archive.org and put in Kenneth Goff, G-O-F-F, and download the PDFs of several of his books and pamphlets like this one. So Gene Dennis gave us the blueprint on how to seize a city when the revolution breaks. At that hour, 2 large riots are supposed to take place. So they plan on having riots. And what better way than to cut off the electricity and the water and the food and the sewer systems and everything. 2 large riots are supposed to take place in every city of any size. So now you know how it's going to happen. Leaders of these mobs are to be carefully chosen and trained in advance. The disturbances are to be of such extent as to require spending large forces of police to these areas. So they'll have to disperse a lot of police. While the authorities are trying to quell these riots, picked bands of Reds, communists, are to be seized. We can call them progressives and liberals now. They don't know it because they'll be thinking the Christians and capitalists and Republicans are demons. They will have brainwashed everybody to such a degree. And who knows with the technological transmitters what they can do to the minds, radiate certain frequencies and drive everybody mad. This is all verifiable if you go look it up. All right, so the disturbances are to be such extent as to require sending large forces of police to these areas. While the authorities are trying to quell these riots, picked bands of red communist, progressive liberals, whatever you want to call them, crazed people on drugs or whatever, mind control, are to seize the radio stations and telephone exchanges. With the aid of their comrades who are employed inside, all communication systems are to be instantly crippled. Flying squads of communists are to seize control of the water supply, shut it off, also the electrical power and gas. This means that no elevators or streetcars are to be running. Homes would be without water, fuel, or light. It would be impossible to communicate with friends or loved ones, even in another part of the city. And these crazy predictions, this is my writing here on this book, that I've been noticing since I went on my little Christmas trip a week ago. And so many videos are exclaiming, even Q and Anonymous and so many other people, the grid's going to go down, prepare, there's big events for 2019. And then I'm reading this. So somebody's preparing the system for a mass collapse. And the people will go crazy with no water and no food. Don't you think? It'll all have been planned. They're going to bring about this insanity in our reality. So it seems. Well, I wanted to read more from this book, but I see that I've used up my 2 hours. This is an original book. You can see the color of the page. Printed in 1948. Little pamphlet. You can go online, Abe Used Books and other sites, and find things like this by Kenneth Goff. So anyways, I've been reading some other books that are quite concerning. One of them is about Serbia and the real causes of World War II. And I'll show you this picture one more time. You can see those countries, and you can see the dark line in this picture. Where they had the Iron Curtain, you can see Poland and all those other countries, half of Germany. That was all given to the communists after World War II. Why would they do that? What does that mean? Who does run the world? These are the fence lines there. They would probably shoot people if you tried to escape. And of course, we all remember in 1991 when they took it down. They took it down because it probably didn't serve a purpose at that time. Maybe they didn't want to continue to run a country like that. Who would it? Have to be some kind of living in hell type of reality. But look at all those countries that became red after World War II. And apparently they had World War II to prevent Germany from growing. And that they took away a lot of Germans' land after World War I. Which again, Germany got caught up in a deceptive plan to bring about World War I and World War II. And probably, regrettably, Germany will be involved in World War III because of where it's located, by the way, between communist, anti-Christian, atheist Russia. So I did look up some material that I wanted to talk about of the Talmud, one of the Jewish Bible books, including the Zohar. And I saw some of these pictures in the Talmud, just to show you who we're dealing with. It says the Talmud on the bottom of this card. You can educate a fool, but you cannot make him think. These are what quotes from Jewish people. This was Henry Ford. There is nothing that the international Jews fear so much as the truth, or any hint of the truth about himself or his plans. This isn't me. This is Henry Ford, the automaker, in his book, The International Jew, Volume 1, page 200. I have the book. I could go look it up. I've made book reviews on that stuff. It says here, this is pictures on Yahoo image site. Look up the Talmud. The Talmud, the heart's blood of the Jewish faith. This is this religion that's supposed to be compatible with Christianity, which we know it's not. And I'd say they're into the Kabbalah and magic, Abracadabra is actually a Hebrew phrase meaning I create what I speak. Some of these cards are just too horrific. From the Publishers Weekly, you're not going to believe this. And I'll have to stop here on this video. This stuff is just too much for me to talk about. What exactly is so scandalous? How about Jesus punished in Hades by Jewish priest for eternally by being made to sit in a bunch of manure? This is what they preach. It's not me. Go on Yahoo image site. These are their quotes. Another one here. In Judaism, there are 613 biblical commandments, and the Talmud says that the chief commandment of all is study. So they're supposed to study this Kabbalah, magic, sorcery, witchcraft religion. Here's another one I have here. A dream is not interpreted. A dream, excuse me, which is not interpreted, is like a letter which is not read. The Talmud. A Jew may do to a non-Jewish, a female person who's not a Jew, what he can do. He may treat her as if he treats a piece of meat. This is in their books. Tells you the books right there. Does that sound Christian to you? So I got a whole stack of cards there I could look at, but it's just too much for me to stomach. One more, that's it. To communicate anything to a goy, that's a non-Jew, this is their teaching. This is the communists. These are the people who are going to control the global world order. These are the people installing the microwave transmission systems, artificial intelligence, microwaving children, controlling the stock market, the water supply, the electrical grid, everything. To communicate anything to a goy about our religious relations would be equal to killing all Jews. For if the goyim, that means non-Jews, knew what we teach about them, they would kill us openly. And you can see the book that this is in right here on my finger side, right here. You can go look this stuff up. Don't believe me. Like I said, it's too horrific. So you look at those pictures on Yahoo image site about the Talmud, the quoted sayings, and then you look what happened after World War II, of Russia gaining control over all those countries that the NATO countries handed to them. East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Poland, Soviet Russia. And you see where Turkey is. Turkey had to be destroyed because it had the Ottoman Empire and controlled the Middle East. That's why they had World War I and World War II. And Yugoslavia with Serbia there in brown in the middle of this picture. I've been reading a book on it, and its story is quite horrific. The things that it was doing. It wanted a Serbian empire like the German Empire or the British Empire or the France Empire or the Spanish Empire or the Portuguese Empire. So it was causing agitation and killing people all in the area because it did not want Austria and all these other countries, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Poland, joining Germany in a prosperous, growing German empire. And of course, that ticked off the United Kingdom, Britain, which was known as the kingdom where the sun never sets. So all these deceptions happened. The plans for World War I, World War II, 9/11 happened so they could get the Middle East. And it's all because of the communist, and the communist is Judaism. It has not gone away. They now call it liberalism, progressivism. And of course, all the people who are Democrats or think that they are liberals or progressives and Jewish people in America don't know anything about this stuff. And the plans and the expansion for the FEMA camps and the global economic collapse and the grid coming down. Just go watch the videos on YouTube. Don't believe me. See all the material about the electric grid collapsing, or the collapse of America, or globalism, or economic collapse. Listen to all those people. There are thousands, if not millions of them. There's so many videos with these things right now. They control our reality, and what you think about, you bring about. It's mesmerization, it's magic, it's mind control. Thank you for watching my video, Rick Miracle reporting.